Jalen Reagor getting traded to Minnesota changes nothing.
6'4" guys running 4.4s. These guys don't grow on trees. And a lot of times I'm willing to bet on, especially long term, on the freak athlete.
You don't ever want to overreact to what guys look like in preseason. There's been a ton of preseason all-stars that never make rosters or never pan out.
And good morning, Sunday, here on Belly Up Fantasy Live. Week 5 ahead right now. And actually, Week 5 already started because we have, once again, another London game going on right now. Chase's Green Bay Packers going up against the New York Giants, both 3-1. It is 20-10 at halftime, in case you are not watching that on NFL Network right now. But we'll keep you updated if anything cool, crazy happens in that as it goes along, as well as any injury updates, as always, this morning. If you're watching, put your start-sit questions in the comments on YouTube, on Twitter. We will answer those live for you, as always, this morning as we go. But without further notice, Chase, good morning. How are you coming from the basement bar?
I got double fist in the day. I've got some caffeine because we had to wake up too early. I've got a little bit of Oktoberfest in the other hand here. It's going well so far with Packers up 20-10. They've looked good. They've looked good as they should be looking, I guess, against the team the caliber of the Giants. Giants are 3-1, but they're not really a 3-1 team in my opinion. But they're putting up a fight. They're looking okay. I'll tell you what. There's a couple of surprises I think on this Giants team offensively. So we'll talk about that here in a minute. Surprises
in not good ways too.
Well, some terrible ways, unfortunately. But
yes. John Nelson, cheers to you as well. Good morning. Welcome to the show. I apologize. A little sneak up cough on me there. But yeah, anyways, like you said, we're going to get into week 5 here. It is just the two of us this morning. So we're going to be able to get through most of these games, I think. We'll definitely get through as many as we can for you. So let's dive right in. And like I said, I'm going to go right down, just kind of start with the 1 o'clock games. And this is unbiased right here, but it just happens to be the first one at the top of my list right now.
Hold on here. Before we jump into the 1 o'clock games real quick, I want to touch on something, what I was just talking about here with this game.
Yeah.
Now, if anybody's been paying attention, and you should have been, if you're watching this show, I assume you like football and you're following football and fantasy football specifically. The Giants are ostensibly without their top 4 of their top 5 receivers. I mean, you can say what you want about Kenny Galladay's situation, but with Sterling Shepard obviously out for the season with his unfortunate knee injury there.
Yeah.
Galladay is hurting out right now. You've got Kadarius Toney, the perpetually, underachieving and not available Kadarius Toney, possibly the new Percy Harvin of the league, except Percy Harvin actually had moments where he played. Wan'Dale Robinson still has not played for them. I'll tell you what, there are some guys to actually look at. Darius Slayton, if you've been watching this game, Darius Slayton has looked good. We've seen Darius Slayton's had some expectations in the past, not really panned out. He might pan out to be a wide receiver 4-5 type this year just by attrition because he survives. But he's looked really good in this game, and he's literally available almost 100% across the board. I think he's owned in less than 1% of leagues. I know on Yahoo and NFL, I would assume that pattern carries across the other platforms as well. So Darius Slayton's somebody, if you're in a deeper league or if you're desperate or looking for a streamer or if you're looking for a sneaky daily play at some point, Darius Slayton, somebody to keep your eye on. Daniel Bellinger is a guy that I have in a couple of dynasty leagues because he's been
popping up for touchdowns for them.
Yes, very much so. So there are some guys on this team. Richie James is still, he's led the team. He's been one of the team leaders in snaps played. I don't like James as much as Slayton because I think Slayton has a little bit more ability and ceiling, but there are guys to look at. Daniel Jones can be a sneaky play at quarterback based on matchups because he has a great running floor. Daniel Jones is a very good running quarterback.
Yeah.
Don't look at him and think anything else. I mean, we know he's not great throwing the ball right now, but he is a very good running quarterback and he can be a sneaky matchup play if you're in a 2 quarterback league, super flex kind of thing, or if you're looking for a streamer or sneaky, like I said, sneaky daily play based on matchups.
Well, and I'm glad you brought up Daniel Jones because I have an interesting question to pose here that is more of real life football, but I'd go ahead and say that the Giants have tried to surround Daniel Jones with weapons and give him a shot.
Right.
Here. So
it's not they haven't tried,
but they've obviously have the injuries. So is what we're seeing right now just a case of bad luck for the Giants, or do you think we can safely say that it's a Daniel Jones problem, as that he's not the franchise quarterback they thought they had?
Well, and here's the other Daniel Jones problem is that they've Alex Smithed him to death. He's had 4 or 5 different coaches and offensive systems in his first several years in the league.
Yeah.
You look what Alex Smith finally was able to do when he got into a stable situation. And then unfortunately he had his injury that we all saw in Washington. But imagine look at what Rodgers was able to do. Rodgers was able to go play behind a Hall of Fame quarterback, whatever anybody else wants to think of Brett Favre right now. He was able to go play behind a Hall of Fame quarterback for 3 years. Whether Favre was trying to teach him or not, he could learn by osmosis, being there, seeing it. He had a stable coaching situation for those first several years and was able to actually develop before he had to be forced onto the field. Alex Smith had 1,386,000 different coordinators and head coaches in his first several years in the league. He was always learning something new. They never allowed him to get stable and be stable. If you reverse those two situations, Rodgers is a great talent. I think Rodgers is a better talent than Alex Smith was, but give the guy an opportunity to develop and grow. That's part of what scares me about the Pickett situation right now. But if they allow Daniel Jones to actually develop for a couple of years with the same crew, and like you said, if some of these young weapons they've put around him, can pan out, he may be a serviceable, usable quarterback in this league. I don't know that he's ever going to be top 10-ish, but he looks like he's got some skill. We've got a couple of questions here now in the comments, and one of them that actually pertains to the game that's going on right now.
Yep, let's get there right now.
Daniel with the same last name that we couldn't say last week.
Yeah, I think Daniel's determined to get me to say this on air. So here we go. We're going to try Kerry Liak. Am I right, Daniel? Kerry Liak.
That's close, I would think. But he wants to know if Randall Cobb is a rosterable wide receiver. And I would say if you're in a deeper league, I think he is. He is not the top option on that team necessarily, but he is maybe the guy that Rodgers trusts the most, and he's going to get looks. He had a look in the red zone just earlier in this game.
He did, yep.
It went over his head, but he did have a red zone look. He's not a big guy, but Rodgers will look for him in the red zone because he trusts him to get open. He will look for him in the open field. He's a rosterable guy, especially if you're thin at wide receiver or if the waiver wire is thin in your league. Yeah, Cobb's rosterable. I'm not starting him most of the time, but if you're in like a 2-flex league too, or a three wide receiver league where wide receiver goes pretty deep and you have to have some of those fringy guys. Yeah, there are worse guys. Who would you roster Cobb over right now?
Well, I think there's plenty of guys, like you said, there's plenty of guys that you would roster him over. Like
I'd roster him over Paris Campbell. And Paris Campbell's the guy that I keep hearing a couple things about in Indianapolis. I think the passing game is in better shape in Green Bay than it is in Indianapolis right now.
Yeah,
and
in Indy,
Cobb's better than Paris Campbell.
So Cobb, even at his age, is better than Paris Campbell. I think also in Indy they have some more ready wide receivers ahead of him, obviously, and Pittman and Alec Pierce and Doolin. Like, I think there's enough guys in front of him there. What Cobb has going for him in Green Bay right now is that Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs are still learning the system there. And I think Rodgers looks for the two of those guys between the 20s a lot. But like you said, when it gets down into the red zone or on third down plays where he knows he needs something, he's tending to go to Cobb in a trusted situation.
I'll tell you what, I would probably roster him over anybody on the Giants not named Darius Slayton. I just brought up Darius Slayton. I think Slayton might be their number one going forward unless Tony and Robinson show us that they can even be healthy. I'd probably roster him over. It would be a big question for me right now between Cobb and Mooney in Chicago. Mooney has the opportunity because he's the number one there.
But I've never believed in Mooney, honestly.
If you have paid any attention to, I like him as a player. Yeah. I just think he's in Chicago.
It's such a bad situation.
And they are not good right now. They are not. No. Honestly, It's a question for me right now if I would take him over Mooney right now.
Well,
Probably
Mooney,
stick with Mooney right now because he's a number one.
just because
And
he's number one.
he's had a decent look here in the last.
And if
week or
anything, they
two.
are going to try to, when they do throw the ball,
They're
they
gonna
are
have
going to
to.
try to force it to him so that, maybe he gets lucky every now and then. But what he has going for him is he's a taller guy, bigger guy. Like,
Yeah.
that offense is not set up to use him properly. And that was my biggest knock on the guy all offseason, why I ranked Mooney so much lower than a lot of people.
Looks like that offense isn't set up to use anybody.
Exactly. But yeah, so that's I agree with Mooney that would be close. Like you said, Mooney, I think you gotta roster him over Dobbs, like you said, just not Dobbs, Cobb, just because he's a number one on a team, but it doesn't mean it's a great feeling.
I'll tell
roster.
You bring up Dobbs right now. I would roster Dobbs over Mooney because I think that Dobbs has a much higher ceiling in this offense right now.
Yeah, and Dobbs is getting even more. So what I'm seeing is that Christian Watson is getting a lot of creative stuff.
Yeah,
they're trying to get him involved in rushing and like end
bring up a name from the past. They're giving him the Percy Harvin stuff.
Exactly, but Dobbs is starting to trend more towards that trusted Cobb role, to where he is getting
actual receiver role
between the 20s. He's getting looks sometimes in the red zone. Yeah, he's being more like a trusted, wide receiver instead of that gadget guy. Which Christian Watson I don't think is going to strictly be a gadget guy, but right now that's how they're trying to get him involved because they recognize he is explosive, which is fine. Yeah. But it's
No, well, the question between the two of them, I mean, just think about it. Would you rather roster Justin Fields number one receiver or Aaron Rodgers number one receiver?
Easy, Aaron Rodgers all day.
There you go. All right, and then one more question quick before we move on to our game previews.
Yes. Well, because this will bring us into one of these other games here, because Daniel once again asked, would you trade Thielen for either Gibson or Dillon? So
yes to the second part of that question.
I was going to say not for Gibson, because Brian Robinson's coming back, and I think the plan for Gibson all along was a reduced role. I think we saw that with him getting special teams work in the preseason and training camp.
Robinson is back. Robinson's healthy.
They were obviously forced to start Gibson because of the tragic situation with Robinson, but he's coming back now. And ever since that week one where Gibson did go off he scored 20 points, but people weren't expecting it.
No,
he's gone down in points every game since. I mean, it's been 4 weeks, but still, that's not a trend that you want to go towards, especially when a younger and explosive guy like Brian Robinson is coming in that is more of the body type to be a bell cow back. So not trading Thielen for Gibson. Thielen for Dillon is...
Depends what your roster looks like. Do you need more, where do you need more help? Do you need it in the backfield, or do you need a wide receiver? Thielen is he's actually looked better this year than I think some of us thought he would. I think everybody got hung up on the whole Justin Jefferson idea, which is still a great idea.
But sure is.
I think a lot of us got hung up on that and thought that Thielen might be just over the hill and done, and he's actually looked pretty good this year.
Let me see what his full stats are, because look, Thielen got off to a slower start in the first 2 weeks, I think, but obviously he had a big week last week. But I think that was partly because they were trying to really force the ball to Jefferson.
Yeah.
It feels like the Vikings are now kind of taking the original approach that they should have done, where they realize Jefferson's going to be more successful if there are other options around him. It's going to open up the field for him if they play it right. Question is, will the Vikings?
Thielen's wide receiver 34 right now, but he's right around Jerry Jeudy. He's right around Romeo Doubs, he's right around Brandon Cooks, Isaiah McKenzie. Those are all guys that you want.
Yeah,
but he's definitely a wide receiver like 3 or 4 type right now.
Past 2 weeks, 18 points against Detroit week 3, and then 15 last week against the Saints. And what's nice about Thielen is he's not going to be touchdown dependent. We've seen that the past 2 weeks. 6 catches, 8 catches. He's 8 and 9 targets. So I think I'm taking Thielen over Dillon as well. That one is a little bit closer, but Aaron Jones hasn't gone anywhere yet, and I think that's the key. I think Thielen will be more involved.
And again, it depends on what you're looking for in your roster. AJ Dillon is running back 28 right now.
Yep.
Right around Ramondre Stevenson and James Conner, which James Conner was drafted as a number 1 running back, number 1, a low number 1, high number 2. Dillon is flexible. Thielen is flexible. It just depends on what your roster construction is. If you would make that trade, though, I agree with you. Don't make it for Gibson, make it for Dillon.
Yeah, and it looks like he's saying his starting receivers are Debo and Metcalf, which are pretty good. I still like the idea of Thielen in a flex over Dillon in a flex. In that case, just because I think the floor, I think Dillon might – actually, no, I think Thielen has both a higher floor and higher ceiling than Dillon right now. I think we all expected Dylan to be a little bit more involved so far this season, and he's been involved, but maybe not to the level that we all thought he would be.
We were talking about it off air before the show. I mean, they got down in the red zone inside the 5-yard line twice so far today, and you and I both were like, "Oh, AJ Dillon time, here we go," and they threw the ball twice.
Because Dillon's running efficient, like I said. Coming into at halftime, he had 4 carries, 21 yards. Like, that's not an inefficient runner. He's
not at all.
They call him Captain Thighs for a reason. He can churn.
That's not his waist, folks. It is his waist, but it's also each of his quads.
So I think so Daniel, I think what we're saying is I think both of us are on the side of probably keeping Thielen here, maybe for Dylan, but I think I would still keep Thielen on my team in this situation, because I think you can probably honestly even trade Metcalf or Thielen for a better running back, honestly, than
Metcalf's
Dylan.
Metcalf's gonna have higher name value.
Yes.
And if you catch him on a week, if Metcalf goes off, say today, you might get somebody to jump on the idea of DK, and you might be able to get yourself a little bit more value back. And now instead of a running back 3 type, you're moving yourself up into running back 2 territory.
Yeah, ride that Geno Smith hype.
Right.
Which shocker.
So far it's been warranted. I put a tweet out this week. I said, you know what? The Seahawks chose Smith over Wilson. Maybe it's time fantasy managers do too right now.
Well, and you know what? Good for Geno Smith. Because Geno Smith never did anything wrong to garner, like, as far as like personally or as you know, as a man.
Geno Smith's biggest crime was getting drafted by the freaking Jets.
Exactly. So like I like seeing guys go like get a second rebirth going to another team. So I'm cool with Geno Smith being good. I was wrong about Geno Smith being good, but I think we all were. So let's just remember that. But real fast, before we start getting into more game today, let's get to our first commercial break. We're going to hear, as always, from our boys over at Manscaped, narrated by Dan Mader. We will be right back after this break.
Football is back, baby. We're back to seeing Mahomes sling beautiful balls all over the field, and your friends at Manscaped are here to help you sling your beautiful balls all season long. With Manscaped's state-of-the-art tech, we'll have your weapon looking more loaded than the AFC West. Football may be rough, but your ball care doesn't have to be with Manscaped. Join the 6 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped by going to Manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping with the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY. Meet the best valued bundle yet for the Manscaped Pocket Rocket, the Platinum Package. At quarterback, the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, a wily vet who makes sure the unit is running smoothly and scoring nonstop with proprietary advanced skin-safe technology. The Lawnmower limits mistakes and protects the ball. Plus, it's waterproof, so the weather conditions are no issue. At running back, the Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, built to bust through all the right holes. A hairless nostril just helps it keep a nose for the end zone. On the offensive line, we have our unsung heroes, the Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant and the Crop Reviver Ball Toner, the Trent Williams and Corey Lindsley of Sack Protection, standing strong to keep your boys fresh and clean through all 4 quarters. At wideout, the cleanest duo in the league, the Ultra Premium Body Wash and Ultra Premium 2-in-1 Shampoo plus Conditioner. With their rugged scent, they attract both the ball and all the ladies in the crowd. Plus, these two leave your skin and scalp feeling more hydrated. That means more plays on the field and less water breaks. At tight end, the product makes your end look tight. Manscaped's anti-chafing boxer briefs, a dedicated jewel pouch to increase ball handling, and a cool, steady vibe thanks to their moisture-wicking fabric. On defense, there's only one thing you need, the aluminum-free ultra-premium deodorant. With refined cologne, quality fragrance, it keeps sweat and locker room scents from making any ground. Plus, it dries clear so the opponent won't even know what hit them. To top it all off, we throw in the best coach in the league, the Shred Travel Bag, as a free bonus. Built to hold the team together, this travel-sized bag has a fumble-resistant zipper. This has got to be a Super Bowl winning roster, but don't take my word for it. Go to Manscaped.com and get 20% off and free shipping with the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY. That's 20% off and free shipping at Manscaped.com when you use the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY. Manscaped for turning your player into an MVP.
And welcome back, everyone. And before we jump back into the games, one quick plug here. If you're looking for your weekly rankings every week, both Chase and I have our weekly rankings up on the BellyUpFantasySports.com website, along with a few others here at the Belly Up Sports Network. So make sure to go check that out right at the top of on the banner. Click rankings. You can click on whichever expert you want to see their rankings, and you can get all your start sit advice basically off those rankings each week. If you if you are unable to join us live here to type it in, just resort to the rankings. They are updated weekly.
That's right. Pick which of us you like and follow the guy's advice. But one caveat I always put out there: check who's available, check who is not playing, or who's in, who's out, because
Exactly.
you never know between the time a guy gets that posted and the time the game time hits who's going to be in and out. There's a ton of guys out this week, unfortunately. So
There is, yeah, and a ton of guys that came out. Honestly, since we've posted the rankings, I know I got mine out there on Friday, but I haven't had the chance to update them since. So yeah, definitely keep that in mind. But yeah, so let's get back into
let's do it.
Let's do it here. And real fast, because up in this Green Bay game, the second half started. Giants drove down to about the 22. And on third and 8, Daniel Jones with a QB draw to get up the middle. He had the hole there to get.
They were going to do the same thing on 3rd and 3, and then they had a false start penalty that pushed them back.
And here's why I wanted to bring this up, because Daniel Jones had the hole, and I think he was going to have the speed to get to the first down marker. Unfortunately, the offensive lineman could not hold the seal, and he got just tripped up from behind. So just so that you mentioned Daniel Jones being a very capable running quarterback, I think that was an example where he was, unfortunately, his line just kind of
and they're scheming they scheme for him to be able to do that.
That was a 100% scheme. It wasn't like he was
wasn't
scrambling.
A pass pulled down. No, he was going all the way.
Exactly. But let's get into this. Let's get into my New England Patriots going up against the Detroit Lions in Foxborough today. A game that I think a lot of us Patriots fans are seeing as kind of a litmus test for Bailey Zappi and for the defense here, because the Lions have been a weird team this year. They're 1-3, but they're averaging scoring 35 points on offense, but they're also averaging giving up 35 points on defense.
Yeah,
so,
they've got to figure that out.
Well, and what's crazy about it is that, they did that last week where they lost 48-45, and they did that with none of their main weapons. They didn't have Amon-Ra, they didn't have Chark, they didn't have Swift.
And they're not going to have them this week again.
Exactly.
Those same 3 guys are missing today.
So it's crazy that Jared Goff, at least I've always thought Jared Goff is a capable fantasy quarterback.
Oh, yeah.
And yes, I did attribute a lot of his success in LA to the scheme and to the coaching staff. I think they really schemed that offense around him and took a lot of it out of his control. He's shown us in Detroit. I don't have the same trust that Detroit's offense and Dan Campbell is doing that same thing. I think he has a little bit more control in Detroit, and he's doing good. He's making stuff work with guys that he shouldn't be making it work with. I think the Patriots defense is good enough to be able to slow this offense down enough. The main concern for me is that if Bailey Zappi can get the offense going enough to score, say, 20 points. Because I think it's very possible that even if the defense plays good, the Detroit can still score 21 points.
Yeah, well, he's facing the right defense to get to make his first start against. That's for sure. But
yes,
is he going to? I mean, Jacoby Myers is out, so he's going to be without his top receiver right now. Jonnu Smith was doubtful. I haven't seen yet if he's in or
from
out.
What I saw in that injury last week, I don't think Smith is playing today. Which is interesting because Henry will be, I think, the only tight end playing, because what they did last week was they slid over I forget exactly who. I think it was Marcus Cannon. They slid over Cannon to play the tight end position, but he was just playing it as a blocker. But it did it brought in that extra protection, which I think really helped them stay in that game. So I expect it to be the same thing this week.
Yeah, like you said, it's an interesting game because I don't think anybody expected Seahawks Lions to be the offensive explosion of the season thus far, 48-45. But there are a lot of guys missing in that Patriot Lions game. I actually have the Lions picked to upset in that one. That was one of the few upset picks that I made this week. Yeah. I got to try to make up a little bit of ground in my pick'em contest, and so I figured, well, you got to start picking, against the grain there.
I could see it.
Because of the rookie starting.
Yeah.
But I will say this. I said this on our group, our Slack chat, to you last week, Andrew, that I was very impressed with Bailey Zappi's poise
Yes.
And the game did not look too big for him. He looked like a capable NFL quarterback. I think that they've got something to develop there. I think that if this ends up being Hoyer's last year, because he's about 382 years old,
I think it should be.
they
He
will
should
be
a coach
okay
now.
going forward with Zappi, and there is a chance that Bailey Zappi could be their next Jimmy Garoppolo. Develop that guy for a few years behind your starter, because I think it's clear they want Jones as a starter and should.
Yeah, but if for some reason
develop
Jones
Zappi
doesn't
for a
work
few
out,
years, and you may be able to get a second-round pick in return for him, or a third
Sure.
rounder in return for him, or
Yeah,
be in good shape if Jones gets hurt.
yeah,
Again.
what I liked about Zappi is that he didn't turn the ball over. Yes, he had the one fumble, but that was attributed to a complete blindside block miss, and he just got clobbered. Like, you can't fault him for dropping that ball. So, he was poised with the ball, and another way you could tell that the game wasn't too big for him is that they ran a few play action plays with him, and he did it successfely. And that's usually something that the teams will stay away from with a rookie, especially come a third
Don't
string
give him too
rookie
much to think about. Just
coming into the game because of an injury. You typically see the offense just go to a very simple shotgun spread. Let's give him as much time to look around as possible. But they had him under center. They had him doing play action, and that means that shows me that obviously the coaching staff is confident in at least the way he thinks. I think he still is physically needs to be developed. But it's clear that he's on maybe not the same, football IQ level as Mac Jones, but I think he's on that same track to where he's smart enough as a quarterback to be able to do some things that most teams wouldn't be able to do with a third string rookie quarterback.
He's in the right place to gain some football IQ too. So
yes. So long story short here, I think it is the week where you can confidently start both Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson. I think they are still going to lean heavily on that run game, and I think they can have success against that Detroit Lions defense. If I had to start any wide receiver, which I wouldn't want to for the Patriots just because, but if I had to start, I get a lean Devontae Parker at this point. He has started to look more involved and look a bit more crisp out there. Kendrick Bourne is still just disappearing. And like you said, with Myers hurt, but I don't love starting Devontae Parker. I don't
love starting any of them, even when Myers is healthy right now, just because they do spread it around quite a bit. They do not have that big alpha male type receiver right now that is going to command all of the targets and all the looks and all the red zone looks. They're going to spread around, and they should. It's a talented group. It's not that it's not a talented group. It's just they don't have that clear number one right now.
Yeah, and I don't see, and from the Lions side, I don't see Hawkinson being able to have the same game that he had last week. I mean, that was
career game.
See that game, a career game. But also, I think the Pats safeties are good enough to where I think they can kind of hold Hawkinson at bay. It looks like Josh Reynolds is going to play, so he could be a weapon for the Lions. But like I said, I think the secondary has been good enough for the Patriots where I don't expect big things from really any of them.
The frustrating thing about TJ Hawkinson, that was pretty much like, you go back and look, everybody, that was quite literally his best game in fantasy since his very first game of his rookie year. So I mean, it's like we saw this great big explosion in his first game. We thought, hell yeah, here we go. We got a tight end again, another one. And every week we're waiting for that same performance, and it never comes, and it never comes, and it never comes, and it never comes. And it takes, Amon-Ra St. Brown and DJ Chark being out to where now, okay, you're going to choose between TJ Hawkinson and Quintez Cephas. Oh, well. I like Quintez Cephas.
Of course.
He's a Badger.
He's not a number one starter type of caliber receiver, but he's a good role player.
But man, think about it, when Amon-Ra St. Brown and DJ Chark are healthy, when they get Jameson Williams off of the injured
that's going to be
list,
a key. I'm big on him.
And TJ Hawkinson and DeAndre Swift, they can throw the ball to. They could go 5 wide with so many weapons on the field and still have Jamal Williams motion into the backfield. And now you've got 4 wide with all of that talent, plus a guy in the backfield that can pound the ball.
You want to talk about being able to exploit every level of the defense, that they would really be set up for that.
I don't think that the shock was that the Detroit, even without the guys that were missing last week, I don't think the shock is that the Detroit Lions scored 45 points last week. I think it's that they're continually giving up. Yeah, they're losing games 42-35 instead of 24-3.
Yeah.
So
No, and that's definitely true. And what's interesting is I'll be curious to see how many weeks of hype last week's game now buys Hawkinson. I think people are obviously going to jump back on the TJ Hawkinson hype train. I'll be curious to see how many weeks that lasts for with him scoring single-digit fantasy
depending
points.
on where you're sitting tight end wise on your roster, if he's one of two, you might be able to jump on that, especially if he scores again this week, even if he has a pedestrian week.
Even if he gets like 11
points
11,
this
12,
week,
whatever. Yeah.
If he scores again this week, you may be able to pawn that off and get some.
Well, speaking, we were talking about Randall Cobb earlier. They just confirmed the pass play on the sidelines that he's now 6 receptions for 90 yards today. And like you said, they did look for him in the red zone earlier. So I think there's still a possibility here early in the third, midway through the third, that he can get a touchdown. So, look, Randall Cobb seems to be each week, honestly, getting a little better. So
Randall Cobb's short, but that's a full grown man catch. That was
the one he made on the sideline. Yes, it was 100%.
All right. Let's move on to the next game. What are we looking at here?
Well, let's because I want to make sure we pick out some real good ones here. So let's go down to what should be an interesting game because with the way these two teams started out. Let's talk about the Titans and the Commanders. You might not have expected me to pick that one, but I think these are two teams that are evenly matched. The Commanders obviously came out, even though the record's 1-3, they came out a lot hotter than people expected offensively, and the Titans obviously got off to a slower start than people expected. It feels like they're both starting to move back to finding their level, water finding its level. So I think the Commanders are kind of right around where they should be. Honestly, their record I think is true to who they are. And same with the Titans. I didn't expect the Titans to be like they were the last couple of years, where they number 1 seed or winning the division easily. I feel like 2-2 sounds about right for the Titans, even if the first 2 games were they looked really bad in those first 2 games.
They did.
But it feels like Robert Woods, Treylon Burks are kind of finding their groove now. Derrick Henry still probably hasn't been worth the pick that you drafted him yet this year. But I don't think it's out of the question for him to start to really gain some momentum here. And then obviously, like we said, Brian Robinson coming back to the Commanders, probably the biggest story. It looks like he's going to be limited to 20 snaps today. The fact that the team was that specific tells me that's probably very true. You want him on your roster, I think, but don't be playing him yet.
Not this week, yeah.
Yeah, don't be playing him yet. And then obviously Jahan Dotson, the nice big receiving surprise for the Commanders, is also out today. So maybe we see a Scary Terry game or maybe one of those random Carl Sims. I think that's his first name, but Sims. I think I have his first name wrong, but Sims, the other receiver, he shows up like once.
Go with Carl, why not?
He shows up once a year. I feel like where he has one game where he has 2 touchdowns. You're like, who the hell is this guy? Then you forget about him again. So I feel like it could be an interesting game. They're playing in Washington. Where are you leaning in this? Because I believe in my weekly, cheap 15-game parlay that I put in every week that I haven't hit on once yet. I believe I picked the Titans, but I think they were both like pretty much even money. I think the spread was like maybe 1.
No, it's a close game. It's interesting. I mean, the Commanders have been actually really good in fantasy wise for fantasy purposes. The Commanders have been really good against running backs this year. They're about like 6th or 7th in the league in terms of fewest fantasy points allowed to a running back to opposing running backs. So that takes away right away. In theory, it takes away or at least mitigates the advantage that you would expect the Titans to have with Derrick Henry because they're missing Treylon Burks. He went on IR this week. He's going to be missing for a couple weeks here. So we're looking at Robert Woods and either Kyle Phillips, the rookie, who has looked pretty good. Actually, has looked like a good pick for them. He was a good pickup for them. I don't think anybody expected him to be the gem of their draft, but so far he's looked like a big value where they got him.
Yeah.
But you're talking about Robert Woods, who has not really shown a ton so far. You're talking about Kyle Phillips. You're talking about Nick Westbrook-Akina, and then Jeff Swaim or Chigo Okonkwo or Austin Hooper or whoever the tight end of the moment is in Tennessee, because they're going to mitigate somewhat.
You can't predict it. Like you said, Jeff Swaim has gotten some run here randomly.
Jeff Swaim has gotten a ton of run. He's been like a weird, like, hey, you could almost stream that guy.
Well, it almost feels like,
and then they throw a touchdown to Chigakonkwo last week, as they should.
it almost feels like the
Chigakonkwo looks
Ravens
he
of,
could be
like,
good.
what was that, like 5 years ago when they had, like Andrews and Hurst, and they had one other guy, I forget who was name, but they had like 3 guys that was like week to week, one would
Max
go off
Williams
for like 2
was
touchdowns.
there for a while, yeah.
Max Williams, yeah, it was like one any week, any of them could go off for 2 touchdowns, and the other 2 would do nothing. It's
Right.
kind of, when it comes to the tight ends, I agree with you. It kind of feels that way between Hooper and Swain.
Yeah. And then, like I said, they got Okonkwo involved. Their other one of their other rookies. But yeah, this is a game. Yeah, it's a hard pick'em game, because if the Titans play to their capabilities, or what we think their capabilities are from what we saw last season, this should be a no question about it. We've had 4 weeks now of Carson Wentz. We've seen 2 good Carson weeks and 2 bad Carson weeks. He's got a ton of weapons to throw to, even with Jahan Dotson out.
Yeah.
Curtis Samuel is not leading their team in snaps played, but he's been their most consistent receiver.
Yeah, he's been the most efficient with his opportunities.
Exactly. And so, but like you said, they still have other weapons. They still have McLaurin. Logan Thomas is a good, capable player when he's healthy and when they're scheming for him. I think
Logan Thomas out today, I believe.
Is he out? Yeah.
Ruled out for week 5. Yes, he was
banged up.
Within the last half hour. Logan Thomas was ruled out.
Okay, so you don't have that anymore. I think if I'm playing people in this game, I think that Henry, despite the fact it's not a great matchup for him, it's Derrick Henry. You drafted him as a number 1 running back. You've got to play him as a number 1 running back. Play your studs. Don't overthink this shit. You're not going to be playing some other flyby. Don't be playing Caleb Huntley just because you picked him up off the waiver wire when Cordero Patterson went on IR.
Exactly.
Play Derrick Henry. You're going to play Derrick Henry. If you have to play one of the quarterbacks, it's only if in a super flex 2 quarterback deep type league. So you're playing Derrick Henry. I would play Robert Woods this week. I would play him as a flex, as a number 3 wide receiver, but he's got upside.
I believe I'm playing him against you this week, actually, in the staff league.
I'm playing him in a couple of leagues that I have him in, because I think that if there's a time when he's going to be able to shine, this might be it. And let's hope, right? Because I like him. I like him a lot. He's a good receiver, and the Commanders give up the 2nd most points to opposing wide receivers. This is a matchup that he could do it with. On the Commanders side, I think you're playing Curtis Samuel again. He's their wide back. He's their wide back, or their running receiver. He's their Debo.
A new title for
right?
that position.
They are going to give him the ball. They're going to scheme him. They're going to get him rushing touches. They're going to get him targets. You are playing Curtis Samuel if you're playing a receiver there. And McLaurin, again, you can look at him as a wide receiver too, possibly with some touchdown upside with Dotson out. But I'm not thrilled if I have to play Antonio Gibson. I'm not playing JD McKissick unless I'm absolutely desperate. And again, I'm holding on Brian Robinson until we see how healthy and what he looks like today. If he looks good today, though, look at about 2-3 weeks down the line, Brian Robinson might be a running back 2 type for you.
Agreed. And real fast before we get to our next and final break, we have a start-sit question here. Where did it go? There it is. Darren says he needs one of the 3 for a flex position. He's got Singletary, Brandon Cooks, and Juju. And I don't see that. So that's what I was going to say. Whether it's PPR or standard, I think I'm going Singletary here. That Jaguars defense against the Texans today, Jaguars defense has looked good, and Davis Mills has not looked good. So,
and the Bills are going to hammer on the Steelers. Steelers have a rookie starting at quarterback. The Steelers have not been a good offense. The Bills are going to hammer away on them, and in the second half, they're going to be able to hand that ball to Devin Singletary and let him eat. And Devin Singletary over the last 3-4 weeks is all we have of the season, but over the last couple of weeks, especially, Devin Singletary has grabbed a hold of that starting role in that backfield. They have not been mixing it up like they did week 1. It looked like it was anybody's guess who was going to be the guy in that offense in the backfield. Devin Singletary is the guy. His snap count and his touch count was by far the biggest discrepancy last week that they've had between him and Zach Moss. James Cook is just not the weapon we thought he was going to be. At least
not yet.
He's not being used as the weapon we all kind of assumed he was going to be. I think you still keep him for the future, especially in a dynasty, but
100%.
Devin Singletary, I think, is the guy there. He's going to get the work. And in the second half of that game, he's going to be able to pound away on the Steelers.
Well, and I think this actually just got more interesting now, and I'm assuming this is Darren's responses because of how confident we just said Devin Singletary, because now he's asking us Singletary or Najee Harris.
That's not a good question to ask me at the moment because I've got Harris. I was high on Harris coming into this year, and I have him across several leagues. And he has kicked me right in the crotch.
So I was not high on Harris coming because I did think that a lot of his success last year, this seemed to be just purely volume based.
And I was assuming that volume was going to continue to carry through. He wasn't efficient, and he's still not efficient.
Exactly.
He can't average 4 yards a run, but I'm not sure that anybody averages 4 yards a run with that many catches.
But the difference also, I would say the difference also is that they don't seem to be throwing to him this year either. Like last year, they were throwing to him as well last year. And that doesn't seem to be part of the game plan as much.
They had Roethlisberger last year who was
to throw
captain
down.
check down because he couldn't throw it farther than the backfield.
Exactly.
But now they've got Trubisky and they've got Pickett, and Pickett wants to drive the ball down the field, which is good because that works with their receiver core. That driving the ball down the field with Deontay Johnson and George Pickens and Chase Claypool with Freiermuth either underneath or up the seam.
It's a capable squad right there.
That is a good setup if Pickett doesn't get destroyed behind that absolutely terrible offensive line.
Well, the other big difference from last year, like you said, Roethlisberger, he checked it down. He also wasn't very mobile anymore. Trubisky and Kenny Pickett, no matter whichever one's at quarterback, they are much more mobile than Roethlisberger was. So I think Harris, even though he wasn't efficient, he just had more opportunities last year because of the situation with Roethlisberger. So yeah. But so are you still starting Singletary over Harris as, say, it sounds like maybe a running back 2 right here this week?
I would consider it, to be dead honest with you.
Because I'll be honest, I am.
I know that in at least 2 leagues I'm starting Breece Hall over Harris this week.
So I think I haven't been the biggest Singletary fan, but I think I'm starting Singletary over Harris this week in the same game because look, the Steelers are on the road. They're going up against a good Bills defense, and like you said, I think the Bills are really going to be able to control the. This is going to end up being
This is going to end up being a negative game script for the Steelers.
Agreed.
And in a negative game script, are you going to keep handing the ball to a guy for 2.8 yards?
No.
Or are you going to try to throw the ball to Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, Chase Claypool, and Pat Freiermuth?
Exactly. And the other thing to consider here, too, is Kenny Pickett getting his first start here as a rookie. They may just use Harris or some of the other running backs more so as extra blockers to give him that extra time to go through his progressions. Like, you got to consider that, too, especially if they're trying to push the ball down the field. They're going to want to protect him. So, yes, Darren, I think it sounds like we are both on board with the starting Singletary over Harris, even as an RB2, if that is, in fact, what you were asking. But real fast, before we come back, after this break, we will hear from Chase as far as which game he is looking after for fantasy success and just entertainment value. So after this quick word from True Classic Tees, we will hear from Chase, and we'll be right back.
Football is back, baby, and our new sponsor, True Classic, wants you to look and feel your best even after a couple of brewskis or going full force on your fantasy football draft. Sure, it's football season, but it's also butt to couch season. Luckily, True Classic has the absolute best fitting clothing a man can buy. Snug in the arms and chest with a little extra space in the torso, their t-shirts are designed to keep you cozy and highlight your best assets no matter what you're up to. So if your special someone is upset that you're watching football all day, at least you can look good doing it. True Classic has already helped over 2 million men find the perfect fit at an affordable price. Our listeners get access to the best deal they offer. For a limited time only, get 25% off with the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY at TrueClassic.com. Almost all men's t-shirts are designed to look good on skinny models with six-packs, but most of us aren't packing anything but a few beers. Fellas, you are wearing the wrong clothes. True Classic tees taper off towards the bottom, but they fit tighter around the chest and shoulders. It's time to highlight your best attributes with a t-shirt you can always confidently throw on. It's about time to get your fit together, so upgrade your wardrobe with True Classic and get 25% off at TrueClassic.com with promo code BELLYUPFANTASY. Free shipping included on purchases over $100. That's 25% off at TrueClassic.com with the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY. If there's one bet you should make this football season, it's on True Classic. True Classic, look good, feel good.
And we are back. And look, I just saw during that commercial break, look down, Amon-Ra St. Brown officially active. We'll see how involved she is, but Amon-Ra St. Brown surprisingly is active, especially considering the Lions have their bye week next week. So you would have thought they'd just give him the extra day, but or extra week, I mean. But yeah, Amon-Ra St. Brown is officially active. Also inactive, though, if you're playing in the Kickers League, which I just had to make an adjustment in our staff league, Dustin Hopkins is ruled out. So I just went ahead and picked up against you, Chase, in the staff league. I just went ahead and picked up Dicker, the replacement kicker for the Eagles this week. So that's just I just needed a kicker. I needed a warm body. So that's what we're doing. Get
week. Out there, buddy. Get some extra points.
A warm body on a good offense. But look, let's get to it here before we tackle some more start-sit questions that I will search the Twitter sphere right now to see who commented in. What is a game you are looking forward to, Chase, this week, either from fantasy or from a pure football entertainment?
Kind of from both. I'm looking at the Jets and the Dolphins. I really want to see how that game goes. I want to see right now with Zach Wilson back. Zach Wilson looked pretty comfortable last week in his return to the field, and they need to know if Zach Wilson's going to be their guy going forward, because they have a ton of young offensive weapons now. Between Breece Hall and Michael Carter in the backfield, with Garrett Wilson and Eli Moore at receiver, even Corey Davis, who's not young, but I mean, he's good. And Braxton Berrios in the receiving core, and then Tyler Conklin looks like one of the. They're not going to win the Super Bowl because of him, but across the league, Tyler Conklin looks like one of the better pickups that any team made. He has been really good this year for them. They've got CJ Uzomah. They drafted Jeremy Ruckert. They have some good offensive weapons around him, and they are building that team from the inside out. From the inside out as well, they are concentrating on the line and trying to build that offensive line, bringing in Lake and Tomlinson and the draft picks they've made recently. They need to know if Zach Wilson's going to be the guy. And he looked comfortable last week. He said in his post-game interview that he felt like the offense was playing together. They were humming. They were running along like he doesn't think they have since he's been there. I think he's more talented than Joe Flacco, and Joe Flacco was throwing the ball 830 times a game and having some success. If they win that game, both teams are 3-2 right now in the AFC East. And this is a chance for the Jets to actually show that they can be competitive this year. It's a chance for Zach Wilson to show that he can be a quarterback, and it's a chance for us as fantasy managers to see, okay, who's maybe the receiver to look at going forward, because Garrett Wilson has been really good as a rookie. Eli Moore was really good last year and had the hype coming into this year. Corey Davis has the connection with Zach Wilson and was their leader last week. With Zach Wilson back, all of a sudden Corey Davis now looks like a receiver again. So I think Breece Hall has definitely seized control of that backfield. He is the fantasy running back to have in the backfield.
Yeah, Michael Carter, who?
Yeah, right. And not to say that Michael Carter's not still a good person to have on that team. He's still a good player to have on that team.
Yeah.
Breece Hall has shown, I think, that you don't have to take him out on third down. So you don't have to necessarily have Michael Carter be a third down. He's not necessarily going to be a Samaje Perine.
Breece Hall starting to catch the ball, which is something that a lot of people weren't sure he was going to be able to, be efficient at.
Right. But then on the other side of the field, obviously, we've got the Dolphins. We've got Teddy starting because Tua's out after that horrific injury that he had.
Yep.
We don't know how long that's going to be. But Teddy Bridgewater might be the top backup quarterback situation in the entire league, to be dead honest with you, in my opinion. He's a guy who started for several other teams. He knows what he's doing. You don't have to change the offense significantly from what Tua gave you as a passer.
Yeah.
And he's still throwing to Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Mike Gesicki, Cedric.
And it looks like Waddle is expected to play this week too.
Right. Plus, I'm interested to see, with Raheem Mostert now leading that backfield, are they going to actually give him opportunities to score some touchdowns rather than letting Raheem Mostert be the guy right up until it's time to score a touchdown and then letting Chase Edmonds take over?
Yeah, it feels like they could be leaning that direction.
I think there are just a ton of interesting things to watch in that game. Plus, it's a game where if the Jets can win, you've got now a logjam at 3-2 here in that division behind the Bills.
Well, and I'm glad you brought this game up because this is my upset pick of the week. I'm picking the Jets this week.
Woo!
At home, picking the Jets over the Dolphins. Like you said, I've been a Zach Wilson believer all year. I was happy with the way I saw him play. It still wasn't perfect. Obviously, in the first half, it kind of took some time to get that rush shaken off, but that makes sense because he really didn't play all preseason because of how early he got hurt.
He got hurt, yeah.
So it was to be expected that he was going to need some time to get comfortable again. But I think the fact that he already found himself pretty comfortable by the second half is a fantastic sign. So, yeah, I'm a believer in the Jets this week, especially with it being a division matchup. They're obviously familiar with what the Dolphins are doing. So, yeah, give me the Jets for the upset this week right here.
Right?
Yeah, I'm
Zach Wilson, everybody. Hey, Zach Wilson. If he's good enough for your mom, he's good enough for you.
And I feel pretty confident in that too. So yeah, Zach Wilson for me. Love it. And I do have him in some leagues, so we will ride that wave. There was another injury thing that I just saw is active, and I can't remember what it was now. So we're gonna Saquon Barkley exited the game with a shoulder injury. I missed that. I did not. That was actually just a minute ago. So on that, and he went there immediately after he basically hopped up off the ground and ran right to the locker room. So
not good.
That could be big for the Giants, not only in this game but going forward. We'll see.
RB1 is done for maybe the day.
Saquon Barkley once again finds himself
to a Saquon. Don't
injured. We'll see how serious that is. It could be a situation where he's back, and we'll see. But keep an eye on that. David Montgomery active for week 5. That's good news for the Bears. He's probably the only thing they got going for him right now. And that's not even anything crazy. So,
but when he's not going, they've got Khalil Herbert, who isn't necessarily a downgrade. So yeah, they don't have a whole time going for him down there. Period. And because I'm up north here. But.
And I just remember the one that caught my attention: Jarvis Landry and Michael Thomas, both inactive this week. So fire up Chris Olave. Who has been as impressive as I expected him to be. I was a big Olave fan, so definitely fire up
only Chris Olave in that game, for my opinion. I mean, if you've got Kamara, you probably.
I was going to say Kamara probably, but
you drafted him as such. But
exactly,
he's not getting the run in that offense that they've given him in previous years. I think the Sean Payton loss and the Drew Brees loss combined were not good for Alvin Kamara's life.
Well, we'll see how Andy Dalton plays into that formula for Alvin Kamara as well, because he is once again getting the start this week. So we'll see how that plays out. Zay Jones also officially active for Jacksonville. So
that's good news.
We'll see how that affects Christian Kirk and mainly
not. It won't affect Christian Kirk, but it'll be good news for Trevor Lawrence.
It'll be good news for Trevor Lawrence, and also be curious to see how it affects Jamal Agnew because he's been playing in the slot. Was Zay Jones back? Did they move Kirk back into the slot? We'll see how that plays out because Agnew's been having some success. So, it was his first.
I think it was his first career 2-touchdown game last week, wasn't it?
Yeah. So you don't often say keep an eye on that Jacksonville game, but that's definitely going to be the case here. And it looks like was that Matt Breida who just ran a touchdown in for the Giants. I can't tell who the running back was. I think it was Breida though. So Giants score. Looks like with the extra point here, they are going to tie this up with 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter. So once again, another London game, back-to-back weeks here. That seems like it's going to be an exciting finish. So go London!
It's the first game in London history where both teams have a winning record. Yeah. You've got the Packers, they're the last team the NFL has put in London. They're the last team of the 32 to play there because no one wants to give up a home game against the Packers. Yeah. The Packers were supposed to have 9 home games this year. That's why they gave one up to go to London. They figured, well, we're still going to get 8.
Sure.
But then not only that, you've got the team from New York, the Big Apple, the biggest city in the United States in terms of draw and worldwide appeal. So you've got 2 teams that people follow. It's a great matchup for London. But so far, it's been a good game. We've got a close game, a tie game, coming down to the end here in the fourth quarter. So.
And correction there, it was not Matt Breida who got the touchdown. It was
Brightwell.
Gary Brightwell got the 2-yard touchdown.
Brightwell's the one to have there, everybody.
And this is good news for me because
if Barkley stays hurt, I like Brightwell better than Breida.
Yes, I would agree with that. And the fact that this game is close, like I said earlier before we got on the air, in my home league, I do have Aaron Rodgers and A.J. Dillon. So hopefully
I am backing up that Brightwell call because I have him in some dynasty leagues. I do have him.
All right. So he practices what he preaches, everybody. So definitely feel all right. listening to Chase here, because he doesn't just spit out stuff that he wouldn't actually do himself. He's a trustworthy guy. So, look, we got a couple minutes here. Let's try to jump into one more game here. It's something that should be interesting. Actually, the Cowboys and Rams later today at 4:30. Cooper Rush, surprisingly, looking fairly confident and stable for this Cowboys team. They've been able to weather the storm. They're still 3-1. The Rams are 2-2. Stafford, outside of Cooper Kupp, has been a bit disappointing. It seems like they can only get the ball to Cooper Kupp, and that's the only way they have success.
Quietly, Tyler Higbee leads the league in tight end targets.
Yes. Higbee has
been very good this year, much better than he has been in previous years. Higbee has
right.
always been one of those guys
Higbee.
that people assume. People have always. He's another guy. We were like, oh, Tyler Higbee's going to do it this. He's going to do it this year. Yeah. And he'll have a good game, and everybody grabs him off the wire, and then he falls apart. But Tyler Higbee this year is leading the. In fact, last week I believe he saw 14 targets. That's the most that any tight end seen in a game so far this year.
Yes.
But yeah, it seems like, as they should. I mean, Cooper Kupp is their best offensive weapon, but they are only going to him when they need anything. If it's 3rd and 3, they're going to Cooper Kupp. If it's 3rd and 13, they're going to Cooper Kupp.
And
if it's 2nd and 2, they're going to Cooper Kupp.
They're just force feeding him, which to a point is fine, because, like you said, he is your top.
He had 19 targets last week.
Yeah, but we'll see how that plays out here. And real fast, let's get in one more start sit here from Lucas. It's not really a start sit, it's more of a general topic of conversation. Do you think Hollywood Brown can still produce even when D-Hop returns? So I think he can. I was more so concerned about Greg Dortch continuing the success he's had, and that's why I was trying to unload him in as many leagues as I could. But I think Hollywood Brown is still going to be able to produce, because I think it's going to be the first time that we see him not as the number one receiver in his career so far. And I'm curious to see what that opens up for him. I think between his speed and his route running, he's going to be able to find some holes, especially against zone defenses.
I've said this the last week or two here, that any love you've been getting from any Carolina receiver, Carolina, so they played last week, from any Cardinal receiver this year, all that love is going to go away when D-Hop comes back, because it's going to be, frickin' Nooks down there somewhere.
Yeah.
But Hollywood Brown has been a guy, like you just said, he's been a guy who we have seen be a team's top option before, and has been a good receiver before. And he's been good, when he's played this year.
I don't think they're going to stop targeting him.
No.
Like, I think Hollywood Brown is not going to, and D-Hop is not going to limit Brown's ceiling this year. No. Kyler Murray will be what it either allows him to hit his ceiling or doesn't. It's going to come down to Kyler Murray, not D-Hop coming back.
Rondale Moore plays last week. Greg Dortch plays, I think, the second most snaps on that team at wide receiver, and had 1 target. So the Dortch era that we all were loving, because he was a great story and it was really cool and he was playing well.
I bought into it for a couple.
The Dortch era is picked him up in a couple leagues. The Dortch era is done, and it will be even doner when D-Hop comes back. I think that Rondale Moore is not somebody they asked about. We had the question about Cobb earlier.
Yep.
I don't think when DeAndre Hopkins comes back, I would not be rostering Rondale Moore.
No,
not in a 10 or 12 team league. If you're in a deeper league or 3 receiver league, something like that, if you're in a deeper league, possibly. But when D-Hop comes back, I think Rondale Moore is absolutely useless from a fantasy standpoint in terms of any kind of predictable usage.
I agree. That offense doesn't feel like an offense that would be able to withstand 3, wide receivers to with one being a wide receiver, one being a
and not when they want
to.
They throw to their running backs too. They want to throw to their running backs occasionally too. So
exactly,
and they have Zach Ertz.
Well, and they have Zach Ertz, and if they ever decide to get him going, they have a very athletic tight end in Trey McBride. Eno Benjamin has shown that he can ball and be involved and be explosive. So
there's a lot of weapons.
There's a lot of weapons there.
Hopkins is the one transcendent talent on the team, though. He will rise to the top, But of everybody else under there, I agree with you that I think Hollywood Brown can still be a
Yes,
useful fantasy piece.
But everyone else, like I said, I started last week. Maybe it was last week I started trying to sell off my shares of Greg Dortch. Like I said, I picked him up in a few leagues to use as a flex option because he was producing. But I picked him up with the sole idea that I was going to be trying to trade him at some point because I did not think he was sustainable considering
get somebody to jump on the numbers so far, and
which most leagues you can find someone to do that. So, but look, that's going to do it for us here Sunday morning here on Belly Up Fantasy Live. We have a full slate of games coming. This is the last week without bye weeks. So once again, next week, make sure you are really paying attention to your bye weeks, making some trades if possible, to really kind of take advantage of avoiding bye weeks. This is the time of year where I really start trying to get after the trade market and getting out from some guys who can who've already had their bye, so that I can avoid having buys in the future. So pay attention. We'll be here every week as always, Sunday mornings at 11 on YouTube, on Belly Up Fantasy Sports on Twitter, to help you navigate all that. Chase, once again, thanks for joining us here. As always, you and I, we missed Kevin this week, but he will be back next week. And we will see you next week, as always. Like I said, Sundays, 11 o'clock. Enjoy football, everyone. Have a good one.